Picture this. Under 1,000 dazzling lights, a brown-skinned girl steps onto the runway, her stride calm yet commanding, her gaze cold as ice, as if the entire world was merely her personal stage. In an era where beauty was defined by porcelain skin, straight hair, and paper-thin frames, her presence was a disruption glorious, defiant, and utterly unforgettable. Her name was Tyra Banks. She didn't arrive in the fashion world as a gift handed down by favor. She entered like someone crashing a glamorous banquet just as the door was about to close on girls who looked like her. That caramel skin, those razor-sharp eyes, that unapologetic poise, they were everything the industry had once considered unmarketable. And yet, they made her a phenomenon. At the height of her fame, when all eyes were on her, Tyra made a choice no one expected. She walked away from the catwalk to fight a bigger battle, a fight to redefine beauty, success, and the very right to be visible as a woman of color in a world too small for real difference. But behind all the flash and fire, was there a darkness the public never saw? One that whispers from the shadows of the dark side of fashion, even in the age of the 90-second supermodels? Tyra Lynn Banks was born on the 4th of December, 1973, in Inglewood, California, a dusty suburb south of Los Angeles, far from the glamour of Beverly Hills or the glitter of Hollywood. There were no photo shoots, no designer clothes, no runways in her childhood, only a young girl with long legs, wide eyes, and a world of stories playing out inside her. When Tyra was 6, her parents divorced. The rupture was quiet, but it split her life in two. She lived with her mother, Carolyn London, a fierce, resilient woman who worked as a photographer and juggled multiple jobs to provide for her children. Carolyn didn't just teach Tyra how to survive. She taught her how to walk through the world with her head high. "You don't need to be like anyone else," she would say. "You just need to be you." But the outside world wasn't as kind. In elementary school, Tyra was constantly bullied for being too tall, too skinny, for having wild curls and brown skin. "I used to hate my own shadow," she later admitted. "It reminded me how much I didn't belong." By age 11, she stood nearly 5'9". Her teachers struggled to fit her into class photos. Her classmates called her giraffe, alien, and worse. The isolation became a quiet wound that shaped her a loneliness she couldn't name, but carried everywhere. Yet within that loneliness, something powerful was growing. Tyra began spending hours in front of the mirror, posing like the models in magazines, not to admire herself but to study them. She wasn't just dreaming, she was preparing. While other kids played outside, Tyra read fashion magazines, studied lighting, practiced eye contact. She wasn't waiting to be discovered. She was building herself in secret, molding the girl who never fit in into the woman who would one day own every room. Her mother saw this, and instead of trying to normalize her daughter, she supported her quirks. Despite their limited budget, Carolyn bought old issues of Vogue, helped Tyra style outfits for practice photo shoots, and turned their backyard into a training ground. Tyra didn't chase perfection. She chased difference. In a world where beauty was often one-dimensional, she dared to think of her awkwardness as strength. Her legs, once a source of shame, became her power. Her skin, once mocked, would soon become iconic. Even before stepping on a real runway, the teenage Tyra had already begun rewriting what beauty meant not just for herself, but for every girl who had ever felt like she took up too much space. Years before she would rise among the 90-second supermodels, Tyra was already fighting back against a system that had no room for her. That fight, quiet, personal, unglamorous, was the first glimpse into the dark side of fashion, where dreams are born not from praise but from resistance. At 15, Tyra Banks was all legs and hesitation. In the corridors of Immaculate Heart High School, she was known as the tall girl with quiet eyes. No one, including Tyra, believed she fit the mold of a model. That is, until a friend turned to her one afternoon and said, almost casually, "You should try modeling." Tyra laughed. In her mind, modeling belonged to blondes with button noses and willowy grace, not a girl who'd spent her childhood being teased for her height, her curls, and her skin. But something stirred. One weekend, in a moment of impulsive curiosity, Tyra asked her mother to take a few photos. No studio, no makeup, just Tyra against a white wall, sunlight spilling through the window. Carolyn clicked the shutter, unaware she was capturing the beginning of something extraordinary. Those photos made their way to several modeling agencies in Los Angeles, among them Elite Model Management. A man named Steve saw something in Tyra that the industry hadn't yet learned to appreciate. He called, invited her in. And suddenly, the girl who thought she'd never belong was heading to her first casting. The room was a sea of sameness: fair skin, blue eyes, cookie-cutter silhouettes. Tyra stood out like a thunderclap. For a moment, the panel fell silent. Then one of the agents said, "She doesn't just model, she inhabits the lens." She signed her first professional contract that day. But her family, especially her mother, was cautious. Carolyn knew how vicious the fashion world could be. She struck a deal. "I'll go with you, everywhere, until you're strong enough to stand alone." And she did. From castings to photo shoots, Carolyn was there, manager, protector, anchor. Tyra's first job wasn't glamorous. It was a local fashion brand. She wore a crimson dress, posed in front of an old wooden door, and was told to look fierce. She obeyed. And when she locked eyes with the camera, something shifted. The room quieted. She didn't need to smile, her stare did all the speaking. But not every door stayed open. Just weeks later, a high-profile campaign rejected her. "Skin tone not aligned with brand identity," the email said. It stung, but Tyra didn't flinch. Instead, she returned to the mirror, looked herself in the eye, and whispered, "They're not ready yet, but I am." That inner voice, steady, clear, defiant, carried her forward, because Tyra knew this wasn't just a shot at stardom, it was a battle for representation. Before the world placed her among the legendary 90-second supermodels, Tyra Banks had already declared herself worthy in silence. She didn't walk into fashion like she belonged. She walked in knowing she didn't and made the room adjust. A subtle rebellion, a quiet storm. And the dark side of fashion had just met its first true challenger. In 1991, 17-year-old Tyra Banks left California for Paris, a city that didn't yet know it was about to be shaken. With her natural curls, golden brown skin, and a presence that refused to be ignored, Tyra made her Paris Fashion Week debut like a storm crashing through marble gates. Her very first casting? She was booked for 25 shows. The numbers were staggering, but more staggering was the shift in tone behind the scenes. Whispers turned to stares, stares to praise. Who was this American girl with the gaze that could freeze air? They had never seen someone like her. And suddenly, every major house, Valentino, Dior, Versace, Chanel, wanted her. At Chanel, she stepped onto the runway in a black and white power suit, wide-brimmed hat tilted just so. The lights hit her skin like gold. Her stride smooth, calculated, unstoppable, cut through the room with grace and command. Karl Lagerfeld was said to have turned to his assistant and whispered, "She doesn't walk. She tells stories with her legs." Tyra Banks wasn't just modeling. She was redefining what it meant to occupy space. From Paris to Milan to New York, she wasn't a guest in the house of fashion. She was rearranging the furniture. Photographers like Patrick de Marchelier and Ellen von Unwerth couldn't get enough of her. She had the rare ability to be fierce and vulnerable, classical and modern, often in the same frame. Then came history. In 1996, Tyra became the first Black woman to appear on the cover of GQ. A year later, she shattered another ceiling as the first Black model to appear solo on the cover of Sports Illustrated swimsuit issue. In a leopard print bikini, her stare was bold, nearly defiant. That photo wasn't just sexy, it was revolutionary. It said, "I deserve to be here. On your shelves, in your gaze." While other 90-second supermodels were praised for their beauty, Tyra was praised for her refusal to conform. She wasn't cut from the European mold of icy elegance. She didn't walk with aloof detachment. She walked like she had something to say, and every turn of her heel was a sentence. She didn't chase perfection. She commanded presence. Designers adored her reliability. Photographers adored her angles. But the public adored her because she felt real. You could see her strength, but you could also see the girl who had once cried in a school bathroom, called giraffe, and too much. She brought both to the runway and made the world listen. Tyra wasn't just a face, she was a force, and her name became synonymous with change. But as with all bright stars in fashion, the more dazzling the light, the more tempting the shadow. And just beyond the adoration, the dark side of fashion waited with its whispers, demands, and quiet cruelties. At the height of her career, when her image saturated magazine covers and her name opened doors to every luxury house, Tyra Banks reached a crossroad that few dared to face. She could remain the industry's darling, collecting covers and contracts, or she could walk away and build something deeper. She chose the second path. Tyra began to speak publicly about what most models only whispered in dressing rooms. She talked about the starvation diets that stole her menstrual cycle, about 20-hour photo shoots where water was a luxury, about the mental strain of being a living mannequin required to glow on command, no matter the cost. "We were expected to look like angels," she said, "but no one cared if we were hurting like humans." Then came the offer, a major global brand requesting a nude campaign. The paycheck was astronomical, the exposure guaranteed, but Tyra said no. Not because she feared being seen, but because she knew the image would be twisted, commercialized, weaponized. "I didn't want my body to be consumed," she explained. "I wanted to control the narrative." And so, she left the runway not because she faded, but because she was ready to fight from a different battlefield. She launched America's Next Top Model, not as a vanity project, but as a revolution disguised as entertainment. Tyra wasn't just the host, she was the creator, the producer, the architect of a show that told girls they didn't need to be size 0, porcelain-skinned, or perfect. They just needed to be real. She mentored models who were plus-sized, transgender, scarred, awkward, and glorious in their own way. She taught them not only how to walk, but how to stand. "You deserve to be here," she would say. "Not in spite of your difference, but because of it." No. Beyond the show, she built her own company, Bankable Productions, crafting stories that didn't erase women of color, but centered them. She rejected movie roles that reduced Black women to stereotypes. "If I'm going to speak," she once said, "I want the words to mean something." Critics scoffed. "A model playing media mogul," they muttered. But she proved them wrong. Tyra won Emmys, built a global brand, and more importantly, became a new kind of icon, one whose power wasn't rooted in being admired, but in making others feel seen. Among the pantheon of 90-second supermodels, Tyra carved a space that no one else dared to enter. She didn't just walk the catwalk, she dismantled it, rebuilt it, and invited everyone in. But not without cost. Speaking up made her a target. Her show was dissected, her methods questioned, her body policed at every weight, every wrinkle. The fashion world, for all its glamour, has a long memory for rebellion and a short one for gratitude. And yet, Tyra kept going, because she understood something few did, that true beauty doesn't just break the mold. It refuses to fit into one at all. After years under flashing lights, Tyra Banks, who once silenced rooms with a single stride, began to feel like a stranger inside the very empire she had built. She had conquered fashion. She had conquered television. But now, every smile was analyzed, every word picked apart, every pound gained headlined. Being an icon came at a cost. You were never allowed to simply be human. The pressure didn't explode, it eroded. In 2015, after the 22nd season of America's Next Top Model, Tyra abruptly announced her departure from the show. No farewell special, no media fanfare, just a short statement. "I need time for myself." Speculation spread like wildfire. Some claimed burnout, others whispered of depression. Tabloids suggested cosmetic surgery gone wrong, but Tyra remained silent. Months later, she was spotted not on a runway or red carpet, but inside a classroom at Harvard. She had enrolled in an executive business program. Tyra Banks, Supermodel, media powerhouse, was now a student again, surrounded by CEOs and strategists. "I wanted to understand the world differently," she said, "not through a lens, but through structure." When she returned to public life, hosting Dancing with the Stars, acting in Life Size 2, launching her own ice cream brand, the response was lukewarm. Audiences had changed. Their adoration had dimmed. Online forums critiqued everything: her voice, her clothing, her body, her age. Some called her desperate. Others said she was clinging to a spotlight that no longer belonged to her. Tyra didn't fight back. She simply showed up less. Her Instagram shifted. Fewer glam shots. More thoughts on aging, on self-acceptance, on releasing the need to be loved by all. Her eyes still sparkled, but softer now. Behind them, the girl who once fought to be seen seemed content, finally, to look inward. She once wrote, "I used to think I had to be strong all the time, but sometimes the bravest thing is allowing yourself to be undone." There was no official retirement, no headline that said, "Tyra Banks leaves fashion." But somewhere along the way, she slipped quietly off the stage. And perhaps that was her final act of rebellion in an industry that demands we never stop performing. For those who idolized the 90-second supermodels, her silence felt strange, but in it was a kind of power, a reminder that the dark side of fashion doesn't always scream. Sometimes it whispers until even the loudest voices decide they've said enough. Tyra Banks never disappeared. She simply turned the page to a chapter where she no longer needed to prove anything. No more runways, no more ratings. Just existence calm, deliberate, and unapologetically her own. She didn't just open doors for black models who came after her. She reframed the idea of what success could mean. It didn't have to last forever. It just had to matter. What Tyra left behind isn't measured in magazine covers or runway counts. It's found in the quiet revolutions she sparked in every girl who once believed she was too much or not enough, in the mirrors they now face with less fear. Today, when a young girl with dark skin, curly hair, and a body the world never celebrated stands before her reflection and thinks, "I deserve to be seen," Tyra is there, in the confidence, in the defiance, in the whisper that says, "You're already enough." Maybe the most powerful thing she ever did was not making us remember her. It was helping us remember ourselves.